Hey everyone, how's it going? Well, it's New Year's Eve, a time of reflection, and debating on whether or not we should reinstate the Doomsday Clock. For me, it's been a very interesting year. I did a lot more collaborations, some in ways I didn't expect.
Hello, this is a prepaid collect call from...
Get me out of here! It's me, Joe! I need bail!
Started a new series of audio commentaries with the guys, wrapped up Lore Olympus, at least in the shorts, reviews, and we'll come back at some point. And ended up having to postpone Volume 3 mostly because of scheduling. I adopted some cats, met Donnie Cates, but the biggest being getting to make a movie with my friends. We're premiered at a few film festivals and won an award at one of them. Not saying things haven't been bumpy, but this year, still not bad. But we're here to talk about comics. In particular, the top 5 most disappointing comics and my top 5 favorites of 2024. And of course, you know me, I like to tear the band-aid off, so we're going to talk about the most disappointing. Number 5. Batman Dylan Dog. Yeah, this was kind of disappointing. I talked about Dylan Dog last month during Fan Expo, but here's a refresher. Dylan Dog was an Italian comic that focused on the titular Dylan Dog, a detective that delved into supernatural cases, facing off against gods, immortals, and all that's in between. It's actually a pretty cool series I do recommend checking out, and when word came out that DC was going to do a crossover with Dylan Dog, people were excited, but unfortunately this was just kind of lazy, and not a great jumping on point if you want to get into the character. This book really expects you to know everything about Dylan Dog, and even then, they really don't do a good job keeping you invested in what he's doing. And when it comes to Batman, I have nothing to say here. Batman is barely a character in the story. It feels like the writer wanted to do a crossover with John Constantine, which is why he shows up in the story and why he feels like him and Dylan have more chemistry. But for some reason, they were like, no, Batman makes more money. It's a pretty disappointing story, with an ending that just makes you go, wait, seriously? It's not as bad as the movie, and yes, there was a movie, do not look it up. This is definitely a crossover where you should just let sleeping dogs lie. Number 4. Chasm, The Curse of Cain. You're probably thinking, why the hell is he torturing himself? After Hallows' Eve and Dark Web, hasn't he had enough of this torture when it comes to Chasm? And your answer is, apparently not, as I did come back to this. Not because I was interested in what Chasm was up to, but out of fear of what they were going to do to one of my favorite Marvel characters. Actually, scratch that, he's actually my all-time favorite Marvel character, Kane Parker. Yeah, no, I'm not kidding. Kane is actually my all-time favorite Marvel character. I'll talk more about that in another video as I do plan to cover Kane, but short version is, when I was introduced to Kane, it was actually during an edgelord phase, a phase that, let's face it, all of us have. But unlike certain characters who are made to be edgy for the sake of edgy, Kane actually evolved, and though not every story he was in was good, I found his development very interesting. As he started off as a Wolverine-style assassin who didn't want to deal with anyone's crap, to someone who just wanted to live. So you can probably guess that I wasn't really excited to hear that him and Ben were going to clash, especially with the rumors being that the two were actually going to fuse and become a character called Kane Riley who would still be Chasm and still act like an idiot. Luckily, that didn't happen. Instead, we got a really stupid story where Ben and Kane have to deal with both the lesser-known Spider-Man villain Freak and Droog from the Eternals, who is messing with Ben's mind and making him fight Kane, all for a plan that, honestly, I don't even remember. It was so freaking stupid. Yeah, this was bad, but luckily not as bad as Dark Web, as since Kane is actually smart enough to realize that no, he doesn't want any part in this in the end. I say we should follow his example. Number 3. Gotham City Sirens. Back in 2009, famous Batman writer Paul Dini decided to make a new series where Catwoman, Harley Quinn, and Poison Ivy would band together to start a new team called the Gotham City Sirens. It was a pretty fun series, which led to some really interesting development, especially with Harley, as she really started to question her loyalty to the Joker and look back on her life. It was pretty cool. Unfortunately, the book was canceled due to the New 52, and a lot of fans were bummed. So, you can probably guess that everyone was really excited to see the team come back in this new miniseries. Unfortunately, it is not interesting whatsoever. In fact, the main 3 really don't need to be in this story. You could have literally had this be any other DC character and the story would still go the same way. As for the plot, it's essentially just a commentary on social media, as the villain Punchline, former sidekick to the Joker, form a parody of OCs, and attempt to be a parody of E-Girls, but poorly executed. Orchestrating a plan that involves a totally not a parody of Prime Drink, Tub Girls, and dudes dressed up like cowboys for some reason. It's a really forgettable story, and feels like a slap in the face to the original run. Luckily, after that, we did get a one-shot that felt like a proper send-off to the series, but this was still pretty bad. But again, luckily, this was not their last ride. Number 2. Spider-Man Reign 2. Okay, who wanted this? Who wanted the comic where an old man Peter Parker fights crime mostly in his underwear in mourning the loss of his dead wife who suffered radiation poisoning thanks to his radioactive sperm? But weird ass twist aside, I do understand that the book does have its fans. And I can get some of their arguments, but this here, yeah, no, this was just pandering. Probably at its worst, as it tries to be both a sequel, but also a bit of a reboot, as it tries to incorporate characters that were clearly never planned to be a part of Spider-Man Reign, like Miles, Spider-Gwen, and to add that, a really weird time travel plot that just reminds me how much I do not care for time travel stories, along with just really weird moments that will leave you with more questions than answers. The original Spider-Man Reign was supposed to be Marvel's answer to The Dark Knight Returns. I will never understand why they wanted to also make an answer to The Dark Knight Strikes Again. Before we get to number 1, here are some dishonorable mentions. Jason Aaron's TMNT run. This is a pretty bumpy start to this new run of IDW's TMNT, but it does have some interesting stuff, like Michelangelo becoming a TV star. Plus, the storyline isn't over yet, so maybe it'll get better later. Sinister Sons. I never finished this series. Absolute Power, Super Son. It was just so boring, and just a reminder of why making John Kent into a teenager was a bad move. The new Secret Six series that's going to be coming out soon might be DC's last attempt to do something with the teen John. And the number 1 worst comic of 2024 is Epitaph from the Abyss. This is really sad. I was really excited for this series, but the first issue left a really bad taste in my mouth. All but one of the stories are really not interesting. None of them are really scary. A lot of them have messages that really don't make sense. Especially the last story by Brian Azzarello that is supposed to be a comment on anti-vaxxers, but I'm not 100% sure if it's supposed to be against anti-vaxxers or pro-anti-vaxxers. It's freaking weird. As for the only story that I did find interesting, that would be Family Values, but I really can't say in confidence that it was good enough to save the entire book. This first issue was not great, and though I did hear that the following issues did get better, this was so bad that I just didn't even want to try. And look, that could just be a me thing. If you think it deserves a second chance, let me know in the comments, and maybe I'll consider it. But for now, Epitaph from the Abyss issue 1 is definitely the worst comic of 2024 for me. Well, we tackled the worst. Now, let's bring out the best.